questions on how the market has been organized internally. I always ask politicians, Greek politicians, and it's always an overwhelming question: why are prices in the supermarket in Greece as high as they are in the Netherlands? Whereas, especially when you know what the average Greek worker makes a month compared to the average Dutch worker. And then I always get an answer, yes, but the topography of Greece is very difficult and high transportation costs. But it's very difficult to prove. Probably it is also because you have many middlemen. If, say, a tomato you buy in the supermarket, it's a farmer who sells it to the product board. The product board takes a cut. Then the tomato has to go to the supermarket. The trucker takes a cut. And it's only one trucker because you need a license to have a cut. One of the examples, which by now has changed. As a private person, you couldn't buy a pickup truck or a van because you had to use a company to do this. But that increases cost, so the transport.
The money gets lost.
So the money gets lost. It's not necessarily the supermarkets themselves that are crooks and have very high prices, but basically the whole system where everybody has protected his part of the market and gets money for that. It makes it very costly to do business. And that's always a perfect system if there's no abroad. If it only goes within the system, it doesn't matter. You could be behind or below, it doesn't matter. It's about what people can pay. But if you have an open system, that's the problem when you are never on the market. You end up buying Dutch tomatoes, or in this case Belgian tomatoes, which by the way are not as tasty as Greek tomatoes, but they're much cheaper. Although they come from the other side of the continent. And that's the kind of problems, or just kind of reforms. I think the current government is aware of them, but it's very difficult to get measures passed in Parliament. I think a nice example is what happened last year, when there was legislation passed that would liberate the hours for pharmacies, along with many other measures, some tax raises, some budget cuts, etc. What you see, everything that is general passes, but the opening hours for the pharmacies didn't pass because the pharmacies formed a lobby and they all know some parliamentarians in the parliament to make sure that this new legislation will pass. But you see that vested interests are able to organize themselves and to hold up reforms when they're not in their interest. That the general interest, which is all of us, is much more difficult to find a role in for those interests. Sure. About the two.
Okay. Obviously, the Netherlands and Greece are different countries. Maybe in some years, a possible economic crisis happens in the Netherlands.
Sure.
I don't see it in the near future, but anyway, the government would ever sign a memorandum or not, and what would they do in such case?
It's very difficult to tell what would happen because it's, as I said, 3 out of our 4 systemic banks have needed government support, and so far we've been able to pay for that ourselves, so there is no need to sign any memorandum with anyone. But if at some point you would need outside help, then you negotiate those outside help and you trying to negotiate what you think is best for your country.
Can I add something to this? Because what we usually forget in Greece, is that everything that's written in the memorandum, the reforms that are being asked for Greece, are reforms that have already been done in all the other European countries. So if the Netherlands would be in this situation, let's say, they had to sign a memorandum, those reforms that are asked from Greece have already been done in the Netherlands.
Yes.
So there are already many things that you couldn't ask. It's not things that people made up and thought, oh, let's punish Greece and make them do this. It's things that they have done themselves already because they knew that they had to do them in order not to end up in some crisis.
So if there was an economic crisis, it wouldn't be like the crisis we have in Greece.
It would probably be a different kind of crisis, yeah.
I think
For different reasons.
but I think every crisis is different. If you look at what we're going through right now, the Greek situation is very different from what's happening in Ireland and Spain. And once again, very different from what's happening in Portugal. Ireland's crisis started because their banks had lent too much money in real estate, and the government made the mistake of guaranteeing full amount of those loans, which was much more than they could afford, and which made the Irish government debt go up very fast, very high. That made the country made the government unsustainable. In Spain, something similar happened with the real estate market. And you shouldn't forget that Spain, actually, before the crisis, had a public debt of 6%, very low, 60%. So it was actually one of the best performers in terms of public debt. So it can be very different. Portugal is in a way a bit similar to Greece, in that the country waited too long to put through reforms which made that their energy market was uncompetitive. Energy was very expensive in Portugal. They lost industries like shoes and textile to the emerging markets, but they never were able to find something else to replace those markets. And then Greece was this combination of government that thought that things were under control, but then had to find out that it wasn't the case. Together with an economy that worked perfectly well if it had only been a Greek economy. John?
You are referring to the north-south divide.
Yeah.
Now, we tend here to group together the north, Germany and Holland as well. So could you possibly please tell us if there is any differentiation as regards the Netherlands vis-à-vis Germany on the major Eurozone problems like debt mutualization, banking union, the pace of it?
Sure.
And things like the central bank, the European central bank's monetary policy, because there's a widespread view amongst economists that a part of the solution, not the solution, but part of the solution could be more sort of lax, so to speak, monetary policy.
Well, the Netherlands is normally lumped together with Germany and Finland. And I think in the last couple of years we've been demanding structural reforms much more vocally than countries like France. But if you analyze the French position, they're much better at packaging it. But it's basically their demands are the same, but they don't have to be so vocal because Germany doesn't float. There are some differences. Germany has, until recently, had an economy that went quite well, so they didn't feel as threatened by the crisis. And Germany has we all know Germany has a complicated history. One part of the history is that there is a sort of psychological fear of inflation, and by creating too much money, by just basically printing money, they were afraid to help out the bailout countries, basically by inflating the way that they were afraid that they would reintroduce inflation with all the bad consequences for the German economy. But on the other hand, Germany is, and I think it's, sometimes I feel Germany is treated unfairly. Germany is one of the most European-minded countries. They are really interested in moving ahead with the common market, moving ahead with some more centralized institutions that could oversee budget discipline. But on the other hand, and that's what we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks, also in Germany there's a lot of unease about things that are happening. And the government is criticized for being too pro-European, and that's why the current government, the Chancellor, who was to be re-elected in September, is taking it a bit slowly. In Holland, the situation is different in that the economy is not growing as well as the German economy, and we have been, and that was a bit ironic, we've always been insisted on a maximum budget deficit of 3% within to stay within the norms of the Eurozone. But Holland is now one of the countries that will not be able to meet that criterion this year or next year. And therefore, this whole idea of flexibility, austerity with flexibility, is getting more attention. The only problem we see there is austerity with flexibility, but too much flexibility means that that requires money, and when you are already indebted to for 120–180% of your national income, you don't have much room for that kind of flexibility. So there's a bit more discussion on austerity than was a year ago, but there's still doubts about how far you can go with printed money. And Finland is once again different. It's a relatively small economy, but it's also an economy that has restructured itself very well. They're very innovative at the moment. All kinds of delegations go to Finland to study this whole phenomenon, how do you promote and foster innovation. And that really is the expression. They're far away, and also why should we pay for what's happening somewhere else in the world? And that's also very much led by popular sentiment. As a not a big economy, we sometimes have a feeling that they feel they can get away with being strict, because it doesn't have much of an impact on the rest anyway. You may remember that 2 years ago, Finland was the only country that asked and managed to get collateral for the money they lent to Greece. And that was basically to meet domestic demands for who don't want to run any risks.
Because you mentioned debt mutualization, which usually is being said that, correct me if I'm wrong, that Germans and Dutch are against it. I think it's very difficult to even start talking about debt mutualization if you don't have the budget in Southern Europe under control first. Because how can you mutualize debt in the entire European Union if, for the time being, in Southern Europe, debt is only becoming bigger because they were approached with the budget. So I think in that case, Germany and Holland are not that much against mutualization as long as first the budgets are more stable than they're now.
so soon.
Because it's always going to be
Yeah, but it's a big risk, and people don't want to write a blank check. And I think there's different political currents within the Netherlands that would have different views on this. Okay, apparently we have a very clear view that doesn't raise any questions. Then I suppose then a couple of words about studying in the Netherlands, as that was asked. We have a website, as I was saying, which is
studyinholland.nl.
So I would start by looking that up. There are a number of undergraduate courses that are taught in English, which means that you have to show your proficiency in English, unless you want to study a course in Dutch, but that would mean that you have to learn Dutch, which is maybe not something everybody here would like to do. Oh, fine, really, there's nothing wrong there. And if you would like to have specific information after you've gone through the information on the internet, you can contact the embassy. It's my colleague Martha who deals with education, and she will be happy to answer specific questions. Now it's a bit late, but for those who have some more time to go, in March, the early first weekend of March, there's normally a education fair at the Friendship and Peace. In Athens, where a great number of Dutch universities are present, and where you can actually talk to people that are studying in the Netherlands or have studied in the Netherlands. We also have a London association, but they're not very active.
No, they also, once a month, I think they go for drinks in Athens. So if you're interested, you can send us an email and we'll bring you in contact with them. They only have a Facebook page.
So that's what I can say about studying in the Netherlands, how to get your information. I can recommend it, but maybe I'm not completely impartial in it. But what I hear from people that study in the Netherlands is that they normally have a good time. Student life is a bit different from here in Greece. And that's what people like too. They go out as well. And a lot. And the other advantage is that you have to sort of calculate the cost of living that will be similar to what you would spend here. And you have Dutch university fees are comparatively low if you compare them to other countries. So that's also one that tells me are comparative advantages. But of course, if you want to study, you shouldn't go for the fees, but just because it's something you would like to study. I think then, are there questions on this? Yes.
I have another question that is interesting.
Could you speak up a bit?
Yeah, this modern time, the student, what is current economic relationship between Greece and Poland and Netherlands?
Sorry, I didn't get
What is the current economic relationship between Greece and the Netherlands?
Okay, let's go back to the slides I didn't talk about. we, at the moment, in 2008, we used to export about 3 billion in products to Greece. And now that has gone up. As I said, in 2008, Dutch exports to Greece were about 3 billion a year. And that made us, I think, the 4th or 5th biggest exporter to Greece. Due to the prices that has gone down to 2.3, including services. And when you look at what we export, you can see that it's the light green one is no, it's the purple one. It's mainly machinery and transportation equipment. Think of trucks. But also the first one, the dark green one, which is 40.8 million. Oh, that's sorry, this is our total export. It's not a Greece, also it's volume. This figure didn't make sense to me. Okay, I have to do it from memory. But machinery is very important. We used to export quite a lot of machinery. Yes, because Greek businesses investing due to the crisis, investing very little in capital investments. Livestock, and then you have to think about cattle, which is used for breeding, but also many food products. It's not only cheese, because much cheese you buy in the supermarket actually mainly greases, but all kinds of food products. I think those are the most important items, and then it's about 500 million in services, and that is license agreements and miscellaneous services. And it's true, and then we're back to our competitiveness. Greece exports much less to the Netherlands at the moment, and that's basically also agricultural products. And I think maybe there's a part of it which is shipping or logistics, but I don't have these data at hand. So that's how we relate to each other economically. But it's also important also interesting to know that there are also about 6 or 7 big Dutch companies that have been in Greece some since the 20s, most of them since the 60s. There are Athenian breweries, which is basically a Dutch brewery who bought a Greek brewery. I don't remember the name of the Greek brewery. I think it's Alpha, yes. But it's now the biggest beer brewery in the country. But basically, it's a Greek company in that it imports barley, but all the rest is basically produced here in Greece. Same is true for a company called Campina, you probably know as Nunu. They started by setting up a factory in the 70s when there was still a milk sea in the European Union. And as Greece had a shortage of milk and Holland had a surplus of milk, they basically exported Dutch milk to Greece and turned this into Greek cheese. That has changed. The whole problem with the common agricultural policy has been solved. So now the company is still there, but they use Greek milk to produce Dutch cheese, which is made in Greece. So that's 2 companies. Then you have Unilever, which took over which you still see brands of in Greece. but they're multinational. They make increase. They make olive oil. They make sauces. They make cleaning products, and they re-export it to other countries, whereas they import, for instance, care products from other factories. So it's basically for them, Greece is an integral part of the network of factories. And then, of course, you have, that's the other interesting one is Inter-America. Doesn't sound very Dutch.
Is Poland a company?
It's owned by a big Dutch insurance group, Achmea, and the reason why you can insure your car on the internet these days here in Greece with okay, good. I'm doing now a commercial. It's anytime. Inter-American introduced as one of the first insurance companies here in Greece the idea that you can take out an insurance policy on the internet on the name at any time. And that they introduced on the Greek market based on experiences their mother company had in Holland, where they had a whole database and they could calculate, okay, if you have this car and this kind of driver, then normally you have this much risk. So they calculate that on the internet on the basis of the database, and they're able to provide those policies cheaper because you cut out the middleman. And then we get to what is said about middleman. So that's also part of our relationships that are Dutch companies that have become Greek but still use Dutch expertise. And the other thing is also true. The executive director of Apostolidi in Greece just moved to the Netherlands to run the European business. So here you see that it's not only one way street. Good. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this presentation. Thanks for your attention.